Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. Hope everyone's been doing well during these strange times. This is Cyrus, and where we talk about complex metaphysical subjects. Today we're looking at what is, in my opinion, a cringy article by Healthline.com about out-of-body experiences. So Healthline actually has much worse articles. There is an article on the site where they summarily dismiss the near-death experience as hallucinations created by endorphins in a very matter-of-fact way. So the very long and complicated and nuanced debate about the NDE, which has been going on for decades, has been completely explained by some 25-year-old grad student that they hire for this kind of mainstream medical catch-all website. So it's one of those websites that makes an article about every possible condition or subject known to man to go up in the search rankings and make lots and lots of money, kind of like livestrong.com, but it is a site that people go to for a lot of health advice, and for some reason they have dabbled in some of the supernatural subjects. So let's take a look at that. And I will say that this article is not as cringy as their references to NDEs, but it's still something worth bringing up and reacting to, responding to. And there's a few surprising things about this article too, which I think are very interesting. I think you guys will find it interesting too. That is to say, the take that they're making here, which maybe isn't quite as bad as I'm making it out to be. So I mean, they have a little bit of wiggle room, which is interesting for this very knee-jerk mainstream type of website. So anyway, so let's read about what they have to say about what really, quote, really happens during an out-of-body experience. Before we go further, though, this is a channel where we discuss these types of subjects. Obviously, I do believe that these types of experiences are supernatural. I practice out-of-body experiences fairly often. And if you like this kind of stuff, please go down, hit that subscribe button, like the video, share it, leave a comment, help support this work. If you're interested in getting involved more, you can sign up as a patron. The $30 and above level means unlimited coaching with me if you need help learning to have an out-of-body experience, a real one, not the kind described in this article, or any other subject matter, or help with anything else. Then that's your opportunity to do so. You will be happy to help patrons at that level all the time. So just let me know if you are a patron. Don't forget to contact me, and we'll do a Zoom appointment sometime. So anyway, so let's continue. What really happens during an out-of-body experience? An out-of-body experience, OBE, which some might also describe as a dissociative episode, is so right away, of course, I'm going to disagree. Some might also describe as a dissociative episode. I wouldn't describe it that way. If you'll notice that they're trying to rearrange what the OBE is to back that definition. And you'll notice this in the wording of this article. So the OBE is a sensation, quote, of your consciousness leaving your body. These episodes are often reported by people who have had a near-death experience as well. So this is, again, there's some weasel words in here. They're trying to weasel things into the definition of an OBE, or make a new definition based upon what they think it is or what they want it to be. So the word here is sensation. So an OBE is not typically a sensation. When you hear sensation, you think that you had a sensation happen to you that you could interpret one way or another. To say a proper out-of-body experience is a sensation would be like going out and walking your dog is the sensation of having a dog on a leash, right? That's not what it is. If you go out and walk your dog, you are literally walking a dog. It's your dog. You take him out of your house. You walk around, you come back, and then now the dog's happy. You put the leash away, you sit down, and then you say, "Boy, I had this weird sensation that I just walked the dog." Right? That's not how it works. With an OBE, you've actually you had an experience where you left your body, floated down the hall, spied on your roommate, or maybe it turned into an astral experience and you went to some other realm for however long it lasts, and the experience eventually ends, but it's not a sensation. It may be accompanied by the sensation of leaving your body, but the experience is not the sensation. So that's how they're trying to weasel in their skeptical argument. People typically experience their sense of self inside their physical body. You most likely view the world around you from this vantage point. But during an OBE, you may feel as if you're outside yourself looking at your body from another perspective. So here we go again with the weaseling. You may feel as if. So once again, it's not feeling, it's experiencing. An NDE is not feeling as if you're being met by loved ones in a tunnel and light or whatever. It's actually, I went out of my body literally and went through a tunnel, and grandpa was there and told me that I need to go back, blah, blah, blah. So it's not like, I felt like maybe my grandfather was there and I felt I wasn't in my body and I felt really good. Look, they want NDEs to be explained that easily as a sensation, but it's not. The same with OBEs. Okay, now they say, what really goes on during an OBE? Does your consciousness actually leave your body? Experts are not totally sure, but they have a few hunches, which we'll get into later. So that's a little bit of honesty. Experts are not totally sure. So there's another writer on this site, the one who dismissed NDEs. It's not this writer. They basically just hire medical grad students or just random people to write these articles up. So I can't really have such great expectations, but at least this writer is showing a little bit more humility than some of the other writers on the site to show that it's not something that's fully understood. There we go. What does an OBE feel like? It's hard to nail down what an OBE feels like exactly because they've done no research on the subject. According to accounts from people who have experienced them, they generally involve a feeling of floating outside your body. It's not a feeling, it's an experience. An altered perception of the world, such as looking down from a height. I think they forgot to finish the sentence, from a height above the body. So is that an altered perception? Well, I guess you could say that. It's a changed vantage point. The feeling that you're looking down at yourself from above, again, it's not a feeling. It's reporting the experience happening. The walking the dog is not the feeling of a dog on a leash. A sense of what's happening is very real. Okay. There we go. I mean, that is a little clue right there that, that is true, that for those who have the OBEs, or especially when it's tied to an NDE, it is I interpret it as a real experience. OBEs typically happen without warning and usually don't last for very long. No, but they can be self-initiated, and then they can last a long time. A look at Jürgen's work, at times my work, and many other people who do this type of thing. But they can happen sporadically to people who are not actively trying to go out of their bodies, which is actually, very common, that you will have an OBE spontaneously. And yes, I guess you could call it a medical condition because it can leave somebody very uncertain and frightened, but because they don't know what that was when they were waking up, why they've sat up in their bed and noticed that they were out of their body, and then they jolted back into their body, especially, people who have no conceptual ability of these metaphysical subjects. So it can kind of rack somebody's mind. If you have a neurological condition such as epilepsy, you may be more likely to experience OBEs, really, and they may happen more frequently. But for many people, an OBE will happen very rarely, maybe once in a lifetime. I think it can happen more than that. Some estimates suggest at least 5% of people have experienced the sensations associated with an OBE, though some suggest this number is higher. So this is where this article gets a little bit weird. It's like, why? Honestly, the article could have left at this point and maybe had an article, maybe had a section of the article talking about what to do if you have an OBE. Don't panic. Talk to your neurologist if you're concerned about epilepsy. Blah blah blah. But instead, it goes into this. Is it the same thing as astral projection? Now we're going into what we talk about on this channel. So this Healthline article just did a little 180 turn, and now we're going into metaphysics. So what's going on here? Some people refer to OBEs as astral projections, but there are some key differences between the two. And this is what surprised me about this article, because am I going to actually agree with this author? An astral projection usually involves an intentional effort to send your consciousness from your body. It usually refers to your consciousness traveling out of your body toward a spiritual plane or dimension. An OBE, on the other hand, is usually unplanned, and rather than traveling, your consciousness is said to simply float or hover above your physical body. OBEs, or at least the sensations of them, are largely recognized within the medical community and have been the subject of many studies. Astral projection, however, is considered to be a spiritual practice. So this is interesting because it doesn't necessarily dismiss astral projection. In fact, if anything, what the article is doing is implying that the OBE is not a spiritual event, but a trick of the mind. Yet astral projection may be, it's an unrelated subject. It's not a medical subject, but it's not something that basically the author is conceding that it's not something that can be disproven or tackled or talked about in this context. But they do speak matter-of-factly that an astral projection usually involves an intentional effort to send your consciousness from your body. It usually refers to your consciousness traveling out of your body toward a spiritual plane or dimension. So in this sense, this author is actually spot on, because an OBE is not necessarily astral projection. For a lot of us, an OBE turns into astral projection. To get into the astral state, often you begin by leaving your body, and there may be the out-of-body experience sensation, to use their terminologies, first, and then you will find yourself kind of warping into the astral domain. Or astral projection comes about in the middle of dreaming, or it comes about directly of intentionally sending your consciousness into a different world, going to kind of a hypnagogic state, and then transferring into that reality. So these different ways that the astral state seems to occur. For me, it's a combination of dreaming and going out of body. So I'll be dreaming, then I'll feel myself leaving my body. Then I'll return to the dream, but now it's not a dream anymore. The random or symbolic elements of the dream are gone, and it becomes a literal realm, a literal experience, with being able to interact with intelligent or independently intelligent people. So you can tell when someone is independently sentient, independently intelligent, and not a figment of your mind. And that's one of the ways to tell that you are having an astral experience. So back to the article, it is interesting that they define this quite accurately here on Healthline, the difference between the two. It's unusual. I wasn't expecting to read that. Okay, now let's get back to the rest. Does anything happen physically? There's some debate over whether the sensations and perceptions associated with OBEs happen physically or as a sort of hallucination. A 2014 study tried to explore this by looking at cognitive awareness in 101 people who had survived cardiac arrest. So the authors found that 13% of the participants felt a separation of their body during resuscitation, but only 7% reported an awareness of events they wouldn't have seen from their actual perspective. So it seems like they are referring to Sam Parnia's AWARE study. I didn't click on this. I mean, I don't think it's the Lancet study. That was from before 2014, but they must be referring to Sam Parnia's work. In addition, 2%, this is Sam Parnia. In addition, 2 participants reported having both visual and auditory experiences while in cardiac arrest. Only one was well enough to follow up, but he gave an accurate, detailed description of what took place for about 3 minutes of his resuscitation from cardiac arrest. So I think it is interesting. So again, I have to give another point to this author for not only citing the AWARE study, but also doing it accurately. So AWARE, it wasn't a slam dunk, but there was a case that came out of AWARE that matched what they were looking for. And so the implication being, if a normie is reading Healthline and they're reading this and they're applying a little bit of critical thinking, they'll see that, okay, the authors found that 7% reported an awareness of events they wouldn't have seen from their actual perspective. So how would you be able to do that short of a non-materialistic explanation, right? They say only 7%, as if to dismiss that a little bit, but that is a proper number, because most NDEs, you're not lingering around your body for very long, at least not long enough to gather information. You're being jettisoned off into a different world, or you're being greeted by loved ones, going into the light, whatever it is that happens to people most of the time. So it is interesting. And so it's not, in my opinion, it's not only 7% like this is a bad thing. 7% was a good figure that came out of that study. And having one person come along and fit that criteria of there having been what we say a veridical awareness while outside the body, it is cited by people like me to show this was evidence. This was what you'd expect if you're literally leaving your body, being able to identify things that you would have had no way of identifying otherwise. And you can go into the NDE literature and find many examples of this, such as the Pam Reynolds case, or the red shoe on the rooftop, things like that. Of, again, veridical awareness. There's also OBE experiments I've done with people that I've lived with, where I have identified things. So again, that the question is veridical awareness when we try to marry the scientific process with these subjects to show that it's really happening. The study discussed above did try to test this by placing images on shelves that could only be seen from a higher vantage point, but the majority of cardiac arrests, including the event involving the participant who had specific memories of his resuscitation, took place in rooms without the shelves. Again, so this writer, and again, there was a different writer on Healthline who summarily dismissed OBEs. I think this was there was an article about what was it? It was a different. I'm not. Might have been lucid dreaming or something. I'm not positive, but NDEs came up in a different article, and the writer was not giving it nearly as much justice as this lady is. They've actually looked into a little bit the literature behind this, and they also, instead of debunking NDEs, they're pointing out the truth, which is that study, the AWARE study, it had a few issues with some, not having the placement on those shelves. Maybe it wasn't done as diligently as Parnia wanted it to happen. I know that there was an AWARE study 2 that's happening. I believe it's in process, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so what can cause them? No one's sure about the exact causes of OBEs, but experts have identified several possible explanations: stress or trauma, a frightening, dangerous, or difficult situation can provoke a fear response, which might cause you to disassociate from the situation and feel as if you're an onlooker watching the events taking place from somewhere outside your body. Yeah, this is where, once again, the article becomes a little bit annoying, because it's an OBE from a frightful situation is not the same as feeling dissociated from your body. These are different occurrences. But stress or trauma, in my opinion, could trigger an actual OBE, because let's say you're about to experience something extremely traumatic and your other body just decides, nope, I'm out of here, and pops out of your body. So there was a somewhat famous case of somebody who's being tortured in the first Iraq War, a U.S. soldier, who described watching all of it happening while floating around in his astral body and choosing when to go back into his body only when the torture had finished. I don't have a link to that story. I actually first heard about that on, might have been like the Discovery Channel, when it was an unrelated program talking about people's experiences at war. Since then, I've heard about the guy before talking about this experience. If anybody has a link to that story, feel free to post it in the comments. Okay, so it talks a little bit more. OBEs could occur as a way to cope with trauma. And yeah, I do think that's possible, but I don't think it's a dissociative sensation. Medical conditions. Experts have linked several medical and health conditions to OBEs, including epilepsy, migraine, cardiac arrest. Yeah, cardiac arrest, because you're having an NDE, you're potentially dying, and so you're triggering in consciousness displacement. Your consciousness is leaving your body. Brain injuries, that makes sense. Depression, possibly. anxiety, Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is actually paralysis. Unfortunately, it's happening to many people right now after catching COVID. Some people I know had mild cases of this, and I've had some symptoms of Guillain-Barré syndrome. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Since as part of, I'm on month number 6 of dealing with like this post-viral illness, and this can include like tingly feelings on your limbs, on up to having complete paralysis of the body. Really scary stuff. I would guess that if you're paralyzed, you may, in that state of crisis, have an out-of-body experience. Dissociative disorders, particularly depersonalization, derealization disorder, can involve frequent feelings or episodes where you seem to be observing yourself from outside your body. Again, they are calling it dissociative. My phone's going off, sorry. They're calling it dissociative, and that type of phenomena could exist, but I'm calling these out-of-body experiences happening in the literal sense. Sleep paralysis, a temporary state of waking paralysis that occurs during REM sleep. It often involves hallucinations, has also been noted as a possible cause of OBEs. I don't disagree, sleep paralysis can create hallucinations. I think a lot of those entities we see during that moment of sleep paralysis are subconscious projections, which are hallucinations, but sleep paralysis is an excellent way to springboard into an out-of-body experience. Research suggests many people who have OBEs with a near-death experience also experience sleep paralysis. Interesting. I don't know how to interpret that, except that possibly people who have, possibly if you have a predisposition to having a psychic experience, being able to disconnect from your body and be conscious of it when it happens, maybe it's also more easy to have a near-death experience as well when you leave your body involuntarily due to physical trauma. In addition, 2012 research suggests sleep-wake disturbances may contribute to dissociative symptoms, which can include a, quote, feeling of leaving your body. It's not a feeling, it's an experience. Medication and drugs. Some people have OBEs from marijuana, ketamine, hallucinogens, LSD. Yes, they can. Other experiences. OBEs might be induced intentionally or accidentally by hypnosis, brain stimulation, extreme physical activity, dehydration, electric shock, sensory deprivation. Do they pose any risks? Existing research hasn't connected spontaneous OBEs to serious health risks. In some cases, you might feel a bit dizzy or disoriented after. It's funny. I guess that can happen. It hasn't happened to me. However, OBEs and dissociation in general can cause lingering feelings of emotional distress. Shouldn't have to, because hopefully some people are learning about the experience and not just filling their brains up with fear or horror films about the astral world or out of shadow people, whatever it is. Not filling their minds up with pop cultural interpretations, and they can look at these as being fulfilling spiritual experiences, and from that angle it should not cause emotional distress. But you will not find advice like that on Healthline. You might feel confused, wonder if you had a brain issue. You might also not like the sensation of an OBE and worry about it happening again. This is funny. Some people also claim that it's possible for your consciousness to remain trapped outside of your body following an OBE, but there's no evidence to support this. Funny, I actually agree with this writer. There is no evidence to support that. The issue is not going back into your body. The issue is staying outside of your body as you're continually being pulled back into your body if you lose focus. Should I see a doctor? Simply having an OBE doesn't mean you should see your healthcare provider. I'm sure if they could find an excuse to charge somebody an arm and a leg to treat their OBEs, they would, but at this point, it doesn't seem necessary. The bottom line, whether your consciousness can truly leave your physical body has not been scientifically proven, but for centuries, many people have reported similar sensations of their consciousness leaving their body. OBEs appear more common with people with certain conditions, epilepsies, and then of course there's near-death experiences, blah blah blah. So once again, I'm somewhere between annoyed by this article and the author, and also impressed by the author. So there's a real 50-50 going on, and I don't mind the way that they finished the article off by saying it hasn't been scientifically proven, and I guess it hasn't because science involves rigid physical standards of testing, which is difficult to do when you are trying to demonstrate leaving your consciousness going into a different dimension, of which there is either very little or no physical correlation with this dimension. So that is a brick wall for modern science, maybe not forever, but so I do agree. I mean, it hasn't been scientifically proven. But as they continue for centuries, many people have reported similar sensations of their consciousness leaving their body. Again, it's not this sensation stuff is really annoying because it's not sensations, it's experiences, but the author is correct that for centuries, I'd say millennia, it's all been there, it's well documented, well understood, and as they said further up on the article, astral projection is not quite the same, and it's a spiritual practice, but they do have a relationship to each other, which is important to understand. And having an OBE is often the springboard into having astral experiences. That's how I started anyway, with OBEs, and then I began having the astral trips as well. And it's never been detrimental. I've never had to medicate it away or think of it as a condition. All right, so what do you think of this Healthline article? See, do they have any similar symptoms? Any similar articles, I should say. I'm just looking through their list real quick to see if they do anything else. No. I guess this is probably the most paranormal article on Healthline, but what do you think about this? Do you think that the author is being fair to NDEs, or is it obnoxious? What do you think about mainstream sites trying to tackle these issues? Are they doing a bad job of it? Are they being fair to the subject matter? I don't know. I honestly thought it could have been a lot worse. That this article could have really taken that skeptical position again, where they say it's nothing but this, nothing but that. There's no credence to taking this to a deeper level, and it's already been established consciousness cannot leave the body. They kind of left it open. They left the question open here, which I think is a positive thing, especially for a mainstream website. But again, some of the other articles I've read on this site not quite so kind to the subject matter. Anyway, one last thing. Again, you have a sensory deprivation tank or something this lady is in, and that again, that's sensory type of stuff, and OBEs are not sensations, and that's my biggest takeaway, is that while some people may only have a sensation, a more advanced OBE is not merely a sensation, it is the literal experience, and that's something that this author, and I think most people approaching this from this angle, will not understand. Anyway, that's it for this article. That's it for this video. I hope you've got some benefit from this. You can check out afterlifetopics.com for more like this, more articles. You can check out the archive on this channel. Many more subject matters covered, much more explored, that anyone can revisit anytime. The comments are open for any video, any subject matter. And you can check out books like Understanding Life After Death or The Afterlife and Beyond over at afterlifetopics.com or on Amazon. That's it for this one. I'll see you guys next time.